What Unfurrowed Ground Foundation really all about is finding ways to create uncommon opportunities in very common places, to take the kinds of things which the privileged get to do and make them accessible to your Joe Six-Pack family.
Unfurrowed Ground Foundation, established by Duey Evans in 2008, is a nonprofit charitable organization charged with positively impacting children.
I guess it's hard for me to sum up in a brief couple of words what Unfurrowed Ground's going to do, because it's boundless. It's the opportunities to create situations where somebody gets to do something which propels them and creates a ripple which ends up as a wave crashing upon a shore so far away, so many generations down the road.
Through Unfurrowed Ground Foundation, Evans wants to extend the ripples first created by previous generations of his own family.
The first time I remember hearing the term unfurrowed ground, I think was at my grandmother's funeral. My dad was using the term to describe our family history. Our family had been the first to do many things, and my dad used the term unfurrowed or plowing unfurrowed ground.
Dewey's father, Richard Evans, says he first realized the impetus plowing unfurrowed ground had been in his life while writing his parents' eulogies.
Their lives were dedicated really to plowing a furrow through unplowed ground.
One of those furrows was started for him when Richard's parents enrolled him in first grade at a private, all-white school called Shady Hill School in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
And it was clear in my mind that it was important to them that I do well there, because they had said almost offhand that you would be the only, at the term at the time was Negro student at the school, the first. And so that was my first sense that they saw this as unplowed ground, and that I would be instrumental in plowing that first furrow through.
Richard's parents expected their son to carry on achieving so-called first, just like they'd been doing all their lives.
I think the influences of my parents were significant. There's no question about that.
Richard's father graduated valedictorian from high school, where he was one of only a few blacks among nearly 700 students. From high school, he received a full scholarship to Harvard, where he was one of only 4 minority students in the entire class of 1925.
Now, the interesting thing about that was that none of the 4 individuals was allowed to live in the freshman dorm. And so they had to live in a rooming house off campus.
After Harvard, he had trouble gaining employment, doing the kinds of things that a Harvard man would do. So he ended up taking a job as a chauffeur, I believe, for someone who owned a lumber company, and took that opportunity to learn the business. And subsequently, when the person he had been chauffeuring decided to get out of the business, wouldn't sell the business to my grandfather, and so my grandfather started his own. So the place that I remember as a kid with great fondness growing up and tootling around was the Evans and Rossi lumber yard in Medford, Mass.
Along with owning his own company at a time when that was unheard of, Dewey's grandparents were the first to do something else. They purchased property and built a home at a time when colored people were not allowed to own land or a home in Lexington.
It was a first because it was first in that neighborhood. And first in the neighborhood meant something, at least to my parents.
Richard's mother also broke her own new ground. To help pay for her son's private education at Shady Hill, Elsie decided she wanted to go to work at Filene's, one of the only major department stores in Boston. But she didn't want any of the positions normally offered to blacks at that time.
She was going to go for something that paid more, that had some level of pride along with it. And being a people person, rather than running an elevator which gave kind of periodic kind of things, she felt that she could deal with people in a fashion that would be helpful, and she probably convinced the administration that she would be a good salesperson.
Elsie Evans became the first black salesperson to work at Filene's.
She stayed there for some time, so she was very successful. My sense was that she felt, and this may be a key to all of this furrow stuff, is that she felt that she was much more identifiable than many of her competitors, because she was obviously someone who wasn't white.
The list of firsts doesn't just belong to Jim and Elsie Evans and their son Richard. Dewey's mother, Peggy, also championed her own.
You know, I think of all of the things which have gone on in my family where we've plowed unfurrowed ground, the one which sticks out might be my mom's employment in the Concord public school system and being the first director of a program called METCO, which was a program which took inner city Boston kids and bused them out to the suburbs to give them an opportunity to have a better education than the Boston public schools were presenting at the time. And she left her job as a guidance counselor to become the first METCO coordinator for Concord. And I would think of all the things, that's probably the one which sticks out for me, only because it happened at a time when I can remember in my life. And so it impacted me.
When Peggy passed away, Dewey heard firsthand the huge role his mother played in so many lives.
At her wake, I was overwhelmed by the number of people who walked up and talked about they wouldn't have made it through adolescence had she not given them the opportunity that she had. And some of those people were young people who stayed at our house because they were struggling with family issues. And, you know, this is back in the 1960s and 70s when guidance counselors could have people come and stay with them when they were struggling with family issues. And those people who I remember as kids, and I wouldn't call them, you know, kind of foster brothers and foster sisters, but kids that I had known because they had slept on our couch for a week at a time here and there, coming up and talking about the impact that my mom had had on their lives.
Positively impacting a child's life as well as their future, just like his mother, is one of the reasons Dewey created Unfurrowed Ground Foundation.
And it's not so much me trying to plow unfurrowed ground, but it's giving other people the chance to go out and do things which are firsts for their family. You know, maybe I'm picking the low-hanging fruit, so to speak, where it's harder for me to do things which are firsts in my family because so much has been done, and maybe it's easier for me to take a young person whose their family has never had anyone graduate from college or maybe even attend college, certainly on play tennis at a national level. And so it's I may be taking the easy way out and saying I'm going to give these people first for their family. But to me, it doesn't really matter why. It just matters that people are being given a chance to do something that they otherwise wouldn't have had a chance to do.
Making a difference is the backbone behind the plowing of unfurrowed ground for generations by Dewey's family. It's in their DNA.
It makes for a very enriching life. It makes for a sense that of the opportunity to be worthwhile, and it gets one to hold one's head up on many occasions to be pleased and proud of what you've done, and what your forebears have done.
It's important for me to do something where my kids recognize what their family is all about, what that legacy is, what the people who came before them had to go through in order for them to have the opportunity that they have now, and for them to appreciate what they have and to carry it forward. I think that there's absolutely no reason to stop now. I would very much love for one of my kids to take up the banner, and actually, the first employee of Unfurrowed Ground Foundation is the next generation. So my sister Stephanie's daughter, Marissa, was the first paid employee of Unfurrowed Ground Foundation, because I think it's important that you know where you came from, what kind of stock you're bred from. Not everyone believes that, but it's certainly important to me.